Turnitin Community Council meeting guidelines, Al Millspaw host. Upon entering, Zoom members log in with TCC and first last name. Zoom guests put your first last name with your affiliation. Individuals calling in via the telephone must identify themselves as TCC members with name, guests with their name and affiliation. The host can assist you. To mute, unmute, tap *6. To raise, lower your hand, tap *9. This meeting is open to the public and will be recorded. Therefore, there is no expectation of privacy. TCC members are residents or one business owner within the boundaries of TCC. Only members may vote. To be recognized by the moderator, raise your flag or hand. Except for the chair and recognized speaker, all participants will be muted. Only unmute when recognized. Interlopers, violators may be removed. Turn your PC volume up. This meeting will provide closed captions. All yours, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. I think you can take that off the screen.
Yep.
And let me go ahead and thank Al Millspaw. He's with University Community Council, but he's also FCC delegate member, and he is stepping in to host this meeting tonight for us, as our usual board members who do that for us are not present this evening, Carolyn Hall and Stephanie Quinn Davidson. So thank you very much, Al, for taking over and helping us out tonight. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, so I will call the meeting to order at 6:38 p.m. So welcome, everyone. I'm Kathy Gleason. I'm currently serving as acting president of Turnagain Community Council. And I don't see our other board member, Ariel Wiggin, zoomed in yet as well. She's a board member at large. So right now we're a body of 4. So we have vacancies with president and secretary. So I would like a motion to approve the agenda that was sent out with the meeting notice. So if I can have somebody move and second, I would appreciate it. Anybody willing to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I second it.
Oh, who moved it?
This is Steve.
Oh, Steve.
I move to approve the agenda if Steve seconds it.
Yep, he's already done that before you even moved it, Dan. So we're good. Okay, is there any objection to approving the agenda as presented, or does anybody have any amendments? I'm not hearing of any amendments, so is there any objection for approval of the agenda? Not seeing any, so it is approved. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to announcements. And probably within the executive board report, there's kind of miscellaneous announcements, but does anybody joining in our meeting have any announcements to make?
We have John and Marie.
Oh, yes, Marnie, go ahead.
Thanks, Kathy. I just wanted to update everyone briefly on the status of Forest Park Drive, which huge thanks to the neighborhood and TCC and the assembly. I checked in with both AMATS and the Muni Public Works Department, and Forest Park Drive is in the queue. We had a team out here this summer checking on resurfacing design and hydrology. And then we also had AWWU out checking on the pipes underneath, be sure nothing needed to be fixed there. So the good news is, in talking with the municipality, they're going to send you all report. Kathy, it's coming to the community council, I think,
Okay.
in the next couple of weeks on the status of the work project for Forest Park Drive. According to the AMATS guys, it will be included in the 2024 project work schedule. And it's just the resurfacing and the restriping for pedestrians, like we talked about so long ago, it seems. And then I also talked to AMATS about what's going on there. And they said Forest Park Drive is listed twice because AMATS is a 2050 long-term transportation plan that captures everything. And in our case, these two listings are possible long-term design changes for traffic calming. And because I'll be long gone by that point, somebody who's younger can follow up on that one. So it's good news. I think the next step will be, Kathy, you'll probably get a report from the city
Okay.
on the work schedule. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks
well,
for everybody supporting this.
Well, thank you, Marnie, for heading that up and really keeping it on the front burner. And I know that we had anticipated work this summer, but sounds like have to wait till next summer.
Yeah,
So,
it takes time.
okay, well, thank you. Anybody else have any announcements that they'd like to share? Yeah, Harrison.
Hey guys, so I met a couple of you. I met Dan a few months back talking about the situation over in our trailer court. Basically, a brief synopsis, we're facing a pretty steep increase here. And part has already gone into effect, part of it will still go into effect in next January, but it's going to jump up $100 each time. And we have just been exploring the options because I do think that's going to push out a number of our most vulnerable residents, especially the incomes. So no real updates in terms of changes on that, but we're still exploring options. And I'm just updating you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I know I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but Dan did, and I believe you were there. So if there's, anything that the council can weigh in on or take part with, anything we can try and help out with, just keep in contact with us. And I know that's a tough situation. It seems like that's what so many renters are facing is increases in their monthly payments. And that's really, I know it's got to be really tough. So so thanks, Harrison, for
thank
that
you.
update.
I'll
And
also
yeah.
put my information here just if anybody wanted to reach out to me, had any ideas or anything. I don't know if we share that afterwards, but I'll put my email address in the chat.
Yep, that would be great. I would appreciate it. Oh dear, I just pushed share again. Can you get that off? Sorry, Al. I meant to push chat and I pushed share screen.
I stepped off for a second. Do you need me for?
Oh, that's okay. I got it. I got it. Okay. Karen, I saw you had your hand up.
I just wanted to ask Harrison to remind us what trailer park he's talking about. What resident?
Oh, it's okay. I haven't actually been here before and explained that. But Forest Park Trailer Court, it is on Hillcrest Drive, directly west of West High School. It's got 48 units.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any kind of other announcements to make before we move on? If not, we will do what we added here about a year ago and put in a little briefing of what's new in Turnigan. If anybody wants to give a briefing of something exciting or maybe something at least we should be aware of within our neighborhood. Does anybody have anything to share?
Well, the something that's not on the agenda was the dedication of the out at Point Warrenzoff, the dedication of the park improvement, whatever.
Well, Dan, I do have it under executive report, so
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so I will be mentioning that, but thanks for the reminder.
Okay.
Let's see, Eugene, you have your hand up.
Yes, between Kathleen and I and our sister Mary Beth, we planted 13 little spruce saplings in the spring, and we put them on City Park between Lusac and Arctic Circle, and then down below our house in the woods above Fish Creek Estuary to hopefully replenish dead spruce bark beetle kill trees over the long term. And they were free from the city or the Audubon Society. So
Yeah.
it's just a nice thing, and we've watered them all summer and haven't needed to water them in a few weeks because of rain, but they're 3 or 4 inches high already, higher than when we planted them already.
Wow, that's excellent.
Just
Thank you
some
so much
nice,
for doing that. Yeah,
Sure.
thanks for doing that.
nice, good news.
Yes, Dan's clapping. We can all clap. That's great. So I guess this might be a good time to thank Steve Montooth, because he worked with Anchorage Audubon on getting a lot of them and getting Turnagain residents and neighbors to take them. And so thank you so much, Steve, for doing that, because he's the one that gave us our 2 little guys that we have on our deck now and looking very healthy. Although they haven't grown much, but they look healthy. So I'm proud to hear that yours are really growing. So that's great.
Yep, so far so
Okay.
good.
Yeah, good.
Thanks,
Steve. Yeah, future generations will really appreciate all those tens of thousands. I forgot how many there were that Audubon provided to the city.
10,000.
10,000. Yeah, even if half of them make it, that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to executive board report. And it's just lots of miscellaneous things. I hope everybody had a good summer. Our last meeting was June 1st, so there have been, multiple things that have taken place since then. Nothing has changed with regard to the slot of president and secretary are still open on our board. If anybody's interested, please let me know. If you want to step in on either one of those, we can have a special election before a regular November election for the calendar 2024 year. Our next board meeting hasn't been scheduled, so if anybody's interested in participating or wanting to know when that's going to be held, just touch base with me, and when that gets scheduled, I can let people know. And Carolyn Hall is the delegate for Turnagain at the FCC delegate level, but she is unable to attend this evening. So Dan is the alternate. Dan, do you want to go ahead and give the report?
Okay, first thing is Mark Butler did retire, and the executive board for the Federation of Community Councils is not actively, but is searching for a manager of Federation of Community Councils. Gene, the office tech, has now been stepped up as the acting manager until they fill the position, and she did get a raise for that. The hours are the same for the Federation of Community Council office. We did not have our picnic in July like we usually do, and so and our next Federation Community Council meetings is September 21st or September 20th. Sorry, September 20th,
Okay.
the Wednesday.
20th.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions for Dan? If not, thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate that.
President or Madam
that's-
Chair.
Or
This is,
Kathy.
Kathy. Dan, is there anything going on at the Federation level that was of interest or concern about anything in town?
Just the roles and responsibilities for the manager position. They're still working on the roles and responsibilities, or what the what this position entails, because it's being modified. It's probably going to be modified from what Mark Butler did, because he did so much. But it also it was a good thing and a bad thing sometimes, because he did advocate for community councils, but he also got in trouble because of the Holton Hills situation. But that's my opinion. We'll see what happens with the roles and responsibilities and what they come up with on that for the position.
Thanks. I was just wondering if there was a discussion about the increase in and I guess spreading out of homeless camps across Anchorage with the change in the services and okay.
Yeah, well, there's always concern about the federation's funding through the municipality, because it is a it helps the community councils, which are part of the charter, but it's not a designated part of the municipality. So they always have to ask for their funding, and so that's always a concern.
Well, but with regard to Karen's, to see if at the FCC level, dealing with any kind of homeless, I mean,
No.
that's typically not done at that level. It's just all the individual community councils that get involved, and then they can put that on their monthly delegate meeting agenda, but they don't really, as a group, take positions and really be proactive on things. It's more of an information dissemination role that that body plays for the most part. So I know a lot of individual councils certainly have been engaged at one level or another. So
Kathy, if I could also add, in general, the FCC does not do resolutions.
right. Okay. If that's it for FCC delegate report, that's great. So just miscellaneous stuff. Let's see, where should I throw these things? There we go. So there were multiple things that happened this summer. One of them was the Anchorage Concert Association hosted a concert at Balto Sepulveda Park in July, on July 13th. I wasn't able to attend, but I know Carolyn Hall did. Anna, I don't have any idea if maybe you joined in on that, but or any of you attended that, but I heard it was well attended and people really enjoyed themselves. So it was great to see one of our local parks be used in for something fun during the summer. So that's great. The next item is the Heritage Land Bank Advisory Commission, and then the Assembly approved the 2023 and 5-year management plan. And as always, we submitted comments and provided input, and I testified at the hearing, and pretty well status quo on all of the items that we track every year with that plan, since we do have Heritage Land Bank land within our boundaries and in West Anchorage. So no big changes, and it was good to see that plan move forward and get approved again this year. Let's see. Next, what Dan was talking about a little bit ago, on August 18th, there was a ceremony out at Point Warrenzoff that it's part of the Indigenous place naming effort that the Anchorage Park Foundation is spearheading. And I did attend, and it was great. Anna, I know you were there as well. It was very, very nice event, very nice event. And I, unfortunately, maybe Anna, you could pronounce the native name that was originally given to Point Warrenzoff area. I won't even try, because I would embarrass myself to try and do that. But it's great so if you go to Point Warrenzoff, if you make that curve and you start heading down down to the parking lot, it's right there to your right. And it's a great location, and it's really, really a good thing that those are going up, and they have plans for a lot more of them, including Earthquake Park, which I think we'll see what can be done with that. Dan and I are considering sponsoring that. So we'll see which ones come up next, and they're great to see around the city. So Steve, did you have your hand up? Go ahead and unmute.
My hand up was just related to that concert, and you go ahead and go. That's
Oh, sorry about that.
okay.
Did you go?
Yeah, I went, and it was a lovely day, lots of sunshine and kids rolling up and skating all over the grassy hills and knolls. It was just a fun evening. That's all. I think it was a great idea. It worked out well. That's all I need to say.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because we weren't able to attend ourselves, Dan and I. So that's great. Looking forward to maybe having another one there at some point in the future at one of our other parks. So, okay. And then August 31st, last week, the Fire Station 5 had a ceremonial push in of the new Truck 5 at the station there off Spenard. And it was a lot of fun. Anna was there, and I'd never been to an event like that before, so it was a lot of fun, and it was good to see a brand new, very impressive truck that services our area is now in place. So it was very nice to attend, and they were allowing people to take the controls and to swing the ladder back and forth and up and down. So I got a chance to do that right before I left. So, and the truck is still in one piece. So I didn't do too bad of a job, apparently. So that was a lot of fun, and congratulations to Station 5 for getting a new engine. Dan. And
That
Dan
engine,
attended. And
that
Dan
engine
attended.
cost, huh?
I just acknowledge that you attended as well.
Yeah, the engine cost $1.5 million to the municipality, and it replaces the old engine, which and it's five feet longer. It has the ladder has a reach of 174 feet. So it's state of the art.
Yep, very impressive, very impressive. So and they are retaining the one that's kind of been quote unquote retired as a reserve. So they didn't, they've actually gained a truck that's still at the station. So last thing I have under executive board report is the 2050 metropolitan metropolitan transportation plan. There was an open house at the library held on August 30th that Dan and I attended. Comments are due on it on October 9th. This could have come under TCC Land Use Committee as well, but there's multiple projects in that plan that are within Turnagain, some trail, some road, and they don't have a lot of detailed description about the projects at this time, which I expressed a little bit of concern about that, but they said, oh, that'll come later. And the very disappointing aspect of that plan is it does not include upgrades to Turnagain Street, which has been a high priority on our CIP list for I don't know how long. And to have projects included in that plan that we've never even heard of, we didn't submit them, we've not ranked them, but to see one that we as a council have really been dogging for a long time, it's not included. So I would expect that we would, in our comments on this plan, that we will ask that be added to the list. So we'll probably take formal action on that at our October meeting, since comments are due on the October 9th. I think that's the end of the executive board committee report. So thank you very much. And we will move on to our regular reports. And I see that we have Senator Matt Clayman has joined us. So hi, Matt. And I'm not sure if we have any other legislative folks. So Matt, you have the floor and welcome.
Well, Kathy, happy September. It's good to be back, and I'm glad everybody had a summer off from community council. Busy summer, a little more rain than I think we all prefer, but it actually was pretty good for some of the gardening in the backyard, at least at our house. I would just say in terms of a couple of items, I know a lot of people were pretty frustrated with the governor's vetoes of some of the education funding. In the line item vetoes, there was some efforts to see if we could get enough votes to potentially override that veto. At least at this point, that seems pretty unlikely. The threshold for overriding a budget veto is a 3/4 vote in both the House and the Senate, and that just seems like a pretty hard stretch, especially given the current makeup of the House. And so that's a short update. There's a number of different things going on. One of the events really important in terms of some of the mental health legislation that I've been involved with for the last couple of years was they broke ground on the Crisis Intervention Center, or the Crisis Stabilization Center at Providence Hospital a couple of weeks ago. And that's really another step in legislation that I've been involved with starting in 2020 to try to bring the Crisis Now model to Alaska, which I think is going to be a big help in terms of folks with mental health challenges and how the community deals with them. And I think how the community deals with those issues more effectively. None of these things are overnight solutions, but it's really positive to see those going forward. And then the last thing I would just note, Kathy, I think I was talking to the airport and you're aware of it. One of the projects that was bid out but didn't get a lot of attention is they're building a site, technically a temporary site for PFAS for some of the construction on the south side of the airport. They'll be moving that to a site on the north side of the airport off the road on the way to Clitheroe. It's, from all I can tell, it's well out of sight of the coastal trail. It's technically described as a temporary site. I haven't had a chance to visit it, but plan to do so here in the next couple of months. And Kathy, I'm pretty sure you're aware of that project that's been going on. And I figure others in the community council, but it's technically temporary, but I think the challenge with PFAS is highlighted by the governor's vetoing that what I thought was really common sense legislation about PFAS. The highlight is you can say temporary, but it doesn't exactly give you a plan of what you're going to do with it when you actually try to move it somewhere else. So temporary, I think, will be there for several years at least. But those are some of the issues. Glad to see everybody back in school. Really pleased that the district had enough school bus drivers to start the year, which certainly wasn't true last year. And that's what I can report on, and mostly here to answer questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I see Dan, you have your hand raised. Marnie, you have your hand raised. Steve, so let's go with Marnie first.
Yes, just a quick question, Matt. Was there any explanation given as to why the governor vetoed this thing on Forever Chemical?
Yeah. No, he has never given an explanation. I know there were media attempts to get him to answer that question. If he did answer it to media questions, I've never seen that published.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dan?
Well, I asked the airport for a copy of the SWPPP for that PFAS, temporary PFAS, and they never got back to me on that. That is the storm, source water, pollution prevention plan is what SWPPP means.
Right.
And I'd really like to see what their plans are for stormwater removals for that area, even though they say that those the secondary containment areas are going to be covered per the plan, but I'd like to see what their stormwater removal, because that is up land from the coastal trail, and if there is a stormwater runoff issue there, then it'll go right into the coastal trail, right into the wetlands. So I'm very concerned about that.
Right. Okay. What we'll do, I did not know you had requested that and it hadn't been provided, and so my office will request that and we'll get it to you as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you.
And I would agree with you that they shouldn't be developing a site like that. They need to have that stormwater plan in place.
Right. It's
Okay.
it's NPDES requirement.
Right. I figured that was my understanding too. Okay. Happy to ask about it.
Okay, and we do have John Johansson here with the airport. And John, I don't know if you want to quickly address that now or wait till we get to airport report.
I can talk briefly to that issue. I don't know if there's a totally separate SWIP associated with that PFAS storage site. I'll look into that. Who was it you contacted about that, Dan?
What happened to Dan?
He's on mute.
Dan, you're on mute.
It's your protege, and she said she would contact you and you would contact me, but it never happened.
Okay, so you're talking about Megan Peters, who, by the way, has left the airport. So I will follow up on that. I know we have a permit for the site from DEC.
Right, for the total airport, but this is the new addition to the airport, this temporary PFAS. And so you guys need to modify your SWPPP and also you need to modify it for the Z, your Z extension of your Z taxiway.
Zulu, the taxiway Zulu.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah,
John, can you send?
I don't know. I'll look into it. I'll find out if there were modifications necessary to our SWIP to accommodate that storage site and what those were.
Okay, thank you.
And John, to save my office having to send in a separate request, if you can just send what you find about that both to Dan and also to my office, that'd be a big help.
Okay.
Okay, and thanks, John, for looking into that for us. Let's see, Steve Montooth, you had your hand raised, and then I'll get to you, Karen.
Karen's been up for a while.
Oh, okay, Karen.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, by the way.
Oh, okay. You're just stretching or what? Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you.
Hopefully he's not stretching with a yellow hand.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Senator Clayman, for being here with us and the info. Sand Lake had a community council member come and talk to us about the antifreeze reclaim project and that build out. And one of the proponents of the project came and talked to at our last meeting, and the resident was expressing concern about the lack of protections to deal with noise, and I can agree with the proponent of the project that it's just so important to do something about our antifreeze and not have it running into Cook Inlet and impacting our water quality and the beluga and our salmon. But as somebody who lives near the airport, I know that changes in patterns really do impact noise, and it can really impact your quality of life. And I just wondered, as the Sand Lake representative, if you had heard more about that project and if there had been changes or extra activity to reduce sound concerns, to address use conflicts and that kind of stuff. Thanks.
So on the so-called North Link development that's on the south side of the airport near Raspberry Road, and I've been actually pretty involved with that, or not involved with, but following the project and engaged with the process now for a couple of years since it first started. The first thing I would actually not necessarily already brought it up, but in terms of the PFAS, my understanding from both airport folks and from the project folks that this is going to be the first place in the country where there's a structures built to recycle the de-icing fluid. And I know there's been some criticism that they're not quite sure that the plan as proposed is going to work perfectly. It wouldn't surprise me, like all plans, it may have some glitches that need to be fine-tuned, but I think the effort to recycle that material is really important. And I think the developer deserves support for going down that path, because they're the first developer, as far as I'm aware of, in the country that has actually tried to do that. I mean, that doesn't mean that there may not be some fine tuning that needs to be done. And once it's underway, it may need to be further adjusted to make it work as designed. But I give them credit for doing that. In terms of the noise issues and the neighborhood issues, there have been a number of changes in the project from when it was first proposed. The most significant change was that when they first designed the project and proposed it, they actually had all the jets, when they parked at that site, they had the jets with the nose facing north and the tail facing south towards the neighborhood, so that when they would turn on engines and start moving, that jet blast would go directly into the neighborhoods. There were a number of complaints, a number of criticisms about the original design. And so the design that they're going forward with has now changed significantly. Now all the hard stands are set up so that the planes, the nose faces south, the tail faces north. So when they do turn the engines on and they run up the engine, sometimes, as we're kind of aware in West Anchorage, sometimes you hear the engine run-ups. The engines will all be facing north, where there's not population living. So they're trying to direct that noise away from residences. They've been doing things with the ground berms to try to address noise. They've hired some contractors that have proposed some potentially innovative ways to help reduce the noise. Again, that's been criticized, that maybe it won't work as designed, maybe it's going to work as well as promised. And again, I think the skepticism is well placed, but I also think when somebody's getting noise scientists to try to figure out ways to deal with the noise, I think we should be willing to try some innovations. And so again, I think that's an area that I think it's a development in progress, but I think they have been making a number of efforts to try to address the noise. Having said all that, I am completely sympathize with the folks that live down just south of Raspberry Road, that the development is going to change the nature of their neighborhood. I mean, we certainly are familiar with that in West Anchorage, that as airport operations have changed, it does have impacts on neighborhoods. To suggest it doesn't, we all know that no one would believe that, but this is part of the reality of moving in near an airport or living near an airport, that that sometimes we get airport noise, and that's just part of living. And I guess we sometimes enjoy the convenience. People will say, wow, you're only 10 minutes from the airport. and we don't realize what it's like to live in Eagle River and have a 45-minute drive each way when we go to the airport. So again, I think that's some of the balances, but I will say the history of the project has the complaints about noise and other environmental concerns have significantly changed how the project appears today, and has significantly delayed the construction. They're basically 2 years behind schedule. Their original plan was to be pushing dirt 2 summers ago, and that was delayed, and delayed a further summer. They may get some groundwork done now that they have their federal permit that just came in a couple of weeks ago. But the folks that have had concerns, they're obviously disappointed the development is going forward, but they also have had a lot of impact on what the development looks like today.
Yeah, and I might add another major concern was the neighbors that are on well water. They're worried about contamination. So one of the things, I've been in contact with one of the active community council members down there throughout this whole process, and the necessity really is to get their water tested now before the project is up and running, so that there's a baseline, and then start having it tested on a regular basis once the facility is operating, to see if there's any kind of contamination. But I know the big ask is for either the airport or Northlink, or if they can get some other kind of funding to put them on city water, so they don't have a long-term concern about well water contamination from that project. So that's another one that's just pretty active and in the forefront minds of those who are still on well water out there south of the project. But that's, you know, I think they need a baseline to see what the level of water quality is now, and then once the project is up and running. And that's hopefully that's, you know, something else they're focusing on.
And Kathy,
but-
you're right about the well water. The interesting part in terms of the neighborhood south of Raspberry, there's actually 26 homes that are still on well water and a couple of hundred homes that are on city water. There are other neighborhoods in Sand Lake that are also on well water, and there's concern about essentially as that area becomes more developed, that well water starts becoming less and less of a meaningful option. So I think there's going to be ongoing push to try to get more homes that are on wells onto city water for just that reason. One of the interesting parts about the 26 homes and the wells that have been tested, even before this development has started, those wells are showing some amount of PFAS in the well water. Though I believe the PFAS levels are considered within they're a very low level, so I think they're considered within the range that doesn't require remediation. But one of the challenges why I think Kathy's right about the baseline is that if there's PFAS already in the water, the question is not, will there be PFAS in the water tomorrow? The question will become, as a product of the development, has there been an increase in the PFAS that you could link to the development? But the water is not PFAS free today in the well water.
Yeah, no surprise, since I mean, you know, they've done testing and you know, Lake Spinard, Hood Creek, Jones Lake, it's all contaminated as well. You know, it's throughout because of the firefighting, you know, done in various areas with the airport. So so we're all just don't drink the water down there when you're trying to swim or wade in the creeks or yeah, don't drink the water. Okay, well, thank you so much, Matt. I think we'll move on since we don't have any other, unless anybody else had anything for Matt. I don't see any other hands raised. So thank you, Matt, and thanks for all your work. And when you start dealing with all the fall and then in session January, you know, keep us updated on what's going on.
Absolutely, I always do.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
All right, you too. So I don't believe we have anybody from the mayor's office nor school board. I know that every community council has probably a new school board representative to weigh in on you know, at our monthly meetings, but I have not been informed about who that may be, so they're probably not kind of up and running yet. Hopefully by our October meeting, we'll hear from school board representative. So we'll move on to airport report, and we do have John Johansson here. So thanks so much, John, for joining us. And I'll hand the baton over to you. You've got the floor.
Okay, I'll go through our airport.
What about
update
Anna
with-
Brawley? What about our assembly?
Did I miss Anna? I so apologize.
Sorry, John.
I've got to cut you off. You couldn't even say one full sentence, so I apologize. Yes, Anna, and you're back on screen, I see. So thank you, Dan. Sorry about that, Anna.
Anna, we can't hear you. You're not on mute. We can't hear you, Anna.
It doesn't show you're muted, but we're not hearing you.
If you can't get it soon, you might want to turn
Hear
the
me
computer
now?
off. There you go. You're
Yep.
okay.
2 thumbs up.
Okay, I'm hearing nods. Okay, great. Or yeah. Okay, thank you. And again, apologies if I get kicked off. And if that happens, you should definitely go to John and come back to me. Welcome back, everybody, from a busy summer. And I hope, as Kathy and others said, hope you had a good summer. I know it was very busy for the assembly. And some of the updates that were already given are things that I'm glad we called attention to already. So I'll give just a few more and then leave some time for questions. And then I'll also say, you know, it's been an especially busy time for the city. So if there's something that I don't talk about that you have questions about, please ask, or we can connect offline so we don't take everybody's time. But first, just to say, yeah, we New Cheech Tunt is the way to say that the name that is what we call Point Warren's off. And then the link that I provided actually has a pronunciation I noticed from the Park Foundation. So even though the event was a link from before, you can listen to the audio, which I had to do. The next thing is, so I'm going to share some good news and then also just updates on some of the big kind of serious issues that we're dealing with. So in the good news category, the Solid Waste Services Central Transfer Station had its grand opening today. So it's across the street from the old transfer station, so it's not hard to find, right off of 56. And as of tomorrow morning, it's going to be in full operation. So if you've got a load of trash, feel free to bring it tomorrow. But today we had a great ribbon cutting. And lots of vendors were there kind of showing off the site, talking about things like recycling. It's a really great facility, so I encourage folks to go over there and check it out. There's also going to be, I think it's called Remade, that does kind of upcycling, taking things and reusing it. So you can drop things off like old furniture and then other folks come and fix it up. So they're really trying to make it, you know, the whole goal is to reduce and extend the life of our landfill by reducing what we put in it. And so lots of great work happening there. So encourage folks to check that out. And then also that project,
Anna, can I interrupt
many years
real
in the
quick?
making.
Anna, do you know if there's a list of
Sorry,
like on their
Kathy, you're
website?
speaking.
Is there, sorry to interrupt Anna, but I just thought I'd throw in a real quick question. Is there a
Okay.
list on the Solid Waste Services website?
The Port of Alaska is another big
Never
capital
mind.
project. And we've been having sorry, let me switch. There we go. We made some big kind of progress on that this summer. So in late July, the Assembly voted to one, approve a tariff surcharge. And so that was not to cover the whole cost of the project, because we're talking probably almost $2 billion at this point for the full port modernization project. But the tariff that was approved is really to help refinance some of the debt on the existing pieces. We had the cement terminal open the petroleum and cement terminal open this summer. And then they're working on the administration building. So that needs to be moved in order to be able to do the rebuild of the 2 cargo docks. So that's moving forward and getting the financing going for part of that. And then in addition, we voted to approve the design for one of the 2 terminals with the goal of getting the other one costed out and decided exactly how big it needs to be. So Terminal 1 isn't going to get torn down yet, unfortunately, because we all know that the port's not in good condition and needs to be rebuilt. But we're working hard to get that design in place for both pieces of it, and then to really be able to move forward. So continue to see some updates on that, but we made some big progress there. Let's see what else. I guess the 2 other big things I'll touch on, I'll add a third one too, which is I see it's on your agenda later, about the Alaska Railroad lease. So just to let you guys know, myself and 2 other members, Member Folland and Member Constant, or Chair Constant, are bringing a resolution opposing that lease and basically supporting the route that is consistent with what folks in Trinidad Community Council had recommended, and which I think we all know is probably the most feasible and least costly route, which is following near the railroad track. So I know that's on your agenda later, but just to say that's also something to be looking the OC on our agenda Tuesday. And then in the kind of category of big problems that we're trying to solve, the first one is homelessness, and I know Karen, you had asked about that as well. So of course we know, what's happened over the course of the summer is not a good situation for anyone, certainly not for the folks living in the camps, including those at 3rd and Ingra and other places. Not a good situation for neighbors, lots of police activity, lots of concern about crime. Not even so much the folks living there, but there's, whenever you have a group of vulnerable people, unfortunately, there's other people take advantage of that. And so kind of what we're seeing is I think what you see when a person is in crisis, where you're kind of at your worst day, right? Where you're trying to just get through the day, and it's hard to move beyond that. So I think the city feels like we've been in that place for a little while as well. But the good news is we took some action on Tuesday. We approved another 220,000 of funds going toward public health and public safety. And that is really a temporary amount of funding, but it's for having a dedicated police presence at the camp. And again, this is something that that has been requested by outreach workers who are trying to work with folks in the camp. I know a lot of campers are really concerned about their own safety, understandably. And so this police detail will really be having a steady presence at the camp, having, instead of coming out in a response to calls, and really having the same staff there consistently so that they can be a presence and kind of deal with that. And then allowing folks like outreach workers and those helping with, you know, medical issues, things like that, are also able to safely enter and interact in that camp. There's also some additional money for sanitation and having somebody on site to basically help with navigation services. So that's really the short-term Band-Aid. The next piece that we're going to be considering on Tuesday is really, we've been scrounging around trying to find funding, especially leftover ARPA funding, unspent funds on other projects, you know, kind of cobbling together what we can to pay for the cold weather, emergency cold weather shelter plan for this winter. And so that's going to include non-congregate housing or shelter, which is basically use of hotel rooms for folks. We know a lot of folks experiencing homelessness. They may be working, or they may, you know, that's they really, it's just the cost of rent that is the issue. And so, you know, for short term, really getting those folks off the street, getting them in a stable place where they can look to their next step in terms of housing, and then connecting them with some of the new housing that's coming online, including a couple in our area, the Lake House, that was the former Lakeshore Inn, and then the former Barrett Inn. So those are still getting fully online, but again, really intended to be affordable housing for folks who need that. So that's part of the cold weather plan. We're also looking at a small congregate shelter. So certainly not at the Sullivan, because that's going to be reopening soon for hockey and other activities. Looking at a smaller facility, looking at which populations it could serve, and then also looking at warming facilities. And so we're working closely with the health department to determine where that could be. And I know there's been a lot of concern in the past about use of recreation centers or things like the Dempsey Arena. I have not heard anybody mention those. You know, we're really looking at buildings that are already vacant and not already being used by the community. So of course, you know, time is of the essence because it keeps getting colder. And I know we saw snow on the mountains this morning. So working on that. And then, of course, all of that is really still a Band-Aid for our larger problems. And so the Assembly continues to work with the administration as much as we can on the longer term plan. And so I think the first priority is getting folks safe in the camps. Second priority is getting winter figured out. And then as soon as we get those pieces operational, we're going to turn to the longer and the bigger picture questions, including shelter, including housing, and the other services we need. We're also working on what our legislative requests will be, making sure that those are targeted, knowing that the state also doesn't have unlimited money, but there's really pieces of our system that need to be led by and funded by the state. And so really, you know, making sure that we're working to make that clear. And then also talking with our federal partners. You might have seen the information about meeting with leaders at HUD about, you know, the kind of inequitable funding that Anchorage receives compared to other communities. So that's one big topic that I know is on everybody's minds and is impacting all of us, you know, even if it's just, you know, feeling sad for folks that are out there on the street. So another big piece that we're working on is housing. So I know there was a big, those of you who were following over the summer, there was a zoning ordinance that had been brought forward by a few members. So that was tabled essentially. And there is a new version of not that same ordinance, but same idea, which is that we do need to simplify parts of our zoning code in order to make it easier to build housing. And that includes new housing as well as redeveloping older properties. For example, you know, maybe putting a duplex on what is a little house now. And I know, you know, Spenard and Turnagain are places that have that kind of mix of housing. So looking at how to facilitate that where it makes sense. And that's called the Home Initiative. So I've signed on to be a co-sponsor of that. The first version of that will be on the agenda for a public hearing on September 26th. And then I'm really hoping to work with my co-sponsors. I think its current form, it does need some work. I'll be honest about that. But I think that it does have a lot of promise. And so looking forward to that conversation and really, again, working with the other sponsors to get to a place that I think makes sense. And I think in all of that context, you know, just today I'm seeing this ADN article about how rents went up 10% in our community. So I think, it feels more urgent than it ever has. I know we all know that housing is expensive and that we don't have enough of it, but I think more and more we're feeling the crunch, especially as every apartment building that burns down, or every place that flips to an Airbnb, that's another housing unit that we don't have. And so one way to do that is to build more housing. So and then I'll also note, I will follow up on the 2050 MTP and the note about Turnigan Street. So I appreciate the heads up about that, because there is some time, and I want to make sure that that project does not drop off our radar, because I agree it is a big priority for our neighborhood. So with that, I will stop because I see there's a couple questions, and then I'm going to paste in the chat. It's a little wonky looking link, but it's our monthly newsletter from the Assembly. So it's got a lot of great information about things that were passed or take action at the last meeting, things coming up on future meetings, and then kind of updates on big projects, including some of the ones that I mentioned. So I'm still working on getting my own newsletter set up, getting my Assembly aid in place, and kind of the pieces that I need to be a better communicator. So sorry also to those who I owe an email to. It's not for lack of trying. It's just been a busy week, but I will get back to you. And with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, it
got
looks
Pat
like I
from
know
Karen.
Pat had her hand up for quite a while now. So Pat.
I just wanted two things. I wanted to thank Anna for her work on the zoning issue, because it is a problem. However, I want to remind you to work with the planning department. I've been involved with comp plans since 1970, so I'd be glad to go over and discuss anything with you regarding what can be done, because we had planned for infilling in the last plan. And so anything that we can do to help make the infilling work properly without destroying the comp plan needs to be considered. And then I am concerned about housing for the winter for your homeless. And that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pat, and I appreciate that. And I did forget to mention that one of the things that we're working on doing, not just that particular ordinance, but looking back at our 2040 plan and really picking out the actions that we think will have the most impact. Because I know there's a lot of things to do. Probably doing just another study is not going to get us there when we know there's some code changes we could make, and there's already some work in process. So really looking back at that big plan. And I forgot to mention that's one piece that I'm working on. Is helping craft an Assembly strategic plan that doesn't replace the plans we have, but it picks up what we have there, and then again really directs our energy as the Assembly and the municipality, as well as other partners, to again where we can have the most impact.
You got
Okay,
Karen and
thank
John
you.
there, Captain.
Pardon,
Okay,
Karen.
thanks. Go ahead.
Does that include ways to disincentivize housing going to Airbnb and other rental platforms? Can you do a bed tax on those small businesses that could help keep more housing in month to month or lease situations, or is there anything that can be done? Because it feels like one of the pushes for the housing change is that it's gonna, hopefully increase the housing. But if most of that housing goes to these rental things, and then we keep putting people in hotels, that's a failure of our policy to drive the way we actually want people to live, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. So on the point of the hotels, I guess one clarification: when we're using them for winter shelter, they are when somebody's staying in a hotel for more than 30 days, they don't pay bed tax. So that's true regardless of who's paying for it. And so at least in our situation for the muni, we're not going to be also paying bed tax. But the point about vacation rentals and short-term rentals is a good one. I know a few other members did bring up some ideas. I haven't seen them come forward as an ordinance in terms of regulation. I know there's a state bill that's proposing that. And we do actually collect bed tax on those short-term rentals now. They're part of the system. But to your point, I mean, it really does displace people. And I know one issue is folks who even just rent out a short-term rental for the summer because they have a renter for 9 months of the year, and having a home for 9 months of the year is not a permanent home, right? And so I think it's kind of an open question how much we regulate. Many other cities have done that. Some have gone really far and then pulled back. I heard New York City actually is really cracking down on that now. So I think it's a question, and I think I'm certainly interested in potentially an additional tax if we need to on those, just because it is using a residential property as a business use. So but I also know property taxes are high already. So I think it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
Thanks.
John
Thanks,
has a
Anna.
hand.
Yeah, let's take one more question, John,
John.
and then we'll have to move on. So,
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I have a question, Anna. How do you reconcile the fact that you and several other members of the assembly that you mentioned want to bring up an issue regarding the Alaska Railroad lease and the McCary property? How do you reconcile that with the fact that that we've not had any information of any significance from AMATS or DOT or anybody else telling us what the prescribed or their desired trail is, nor with any of the details that the Turnagain Community Council resolution specifically addresses, meaning it's a very definitive path in a very definitive location under very definitive set of circumstances and trail construction methods that basically depend. That's the only way that the Turnagain Community Council will support it. So until such time as we have some detailed plan of what they intend to do and exactly the way they want to go, why would there be any support or non-support of anything that's going on until such time as we see what they're going to do?
Yeah, that is a good question. And so I can't speak to the details about AMATS or those other agencies. And I remember from last year there was frustration because the project team was not always forthcoming with information. So as I understand it right now, AMATS was actually the one who called attention to this lease, and it's basically the location of the lease that's proposed is exactly where the same route that Turnagain Community Council proposed or supported, I should say, would be. So blocking access to be able to connect the coastal trail from the rest of that route on that particular lease property, that's basically a deal killer for this trail, because it means every other alternative, as we know, has much more impacts and is much higher cost. And so at this point, what I've heard from others, and I should say too, I was not the one working on kind of the details of this because I'm not one of our AMATS representatives, but my understanding is that it seems like there is alignment toward that route within the railroad right of way, and kind of not these other routes, and then knowing that those are much more expensive, especially the one that would go over La Honda Drive and then have to build 2 different bridges. And then I know the one closer to your guys' properties that cuts more into existing wildlife habitat and trees and your guys' backyards. And so I can't speak to how much they've been sharing as far as the route, but right now the purpose of opposing this lease, or at least from my perspective, is because that particular place would make it infeasible to connect the public trail there. And so it's getting in the way of basically the route that I think everybody supports and sees as the most feasible.
But here's the question, though, is that if the support of the Turnagain Community Council is for that route in a specific design consideration and in a strict consideration of at least at the McCary property and down at our property as well, it's a conditional support. It's not just a support of the route, you guys do it the way you want. It's a conditional support based upon a specific set of guidelines and definitions that we all agreed upon and that we all looked at and we all wrote them down, put them on a map, and everything is there. How do we, how do you say that this is wrong or that's right. You can't do it until you understand what they're planning to do. I mean, if we say that we're for their plan, that we support their plan, and yet they're going overground, they're coming in my backyard, they're going right over McCary's Road. Are you going to support that?
I think, I mean, at this point, the piece that we're taking a position on, or at least that the assembly's sponsors are bringing forward, is to oppose the railroads leasing to that family of that particular property. And so that's kind of what's on the table right now. And so I hear you that it's not just about that. I think it's a separate question for the community council, especially depending on the outcome of this lease. If the lease does go forward and then there is a trail alternative, then I would leave it to you guys, the council, to decide what your position is, obviously, and to weigh what those are. I think right now, as I said, the action that we're taking is to oppose that lease because that particular piece of property is the connecting point that would make this route that including folks in Turnagain have supported. And I'll say too, one of the supporting documents that we're putting in this resolution, and assuming it passes on Tuesday, is the Turnagain Community Council resolution from 2022 and the attachments with the map. I was going back and looking at those and explaining to my co-sponsors, what action was taken last year by the council. So those will also be in the public record along with this to, again, emphasize this is the route that everybody talked about. And I think some of the feasibility challenges with most of the others, including the additional cost.
But it is a conditional support based upon what's in our Turnagain Community Council resolution.
Right. Yeah. And I think what we're providing that resolution to speak for itself. So not claiming that there is unconditional support. And of course, the assembly's not claiming, we're not communicating Turnagain's position other than what you guys have already communicated. Right. And so again, I think
it's the president.
Right. Yeah. At the time. And so, like I said, the step that we're focused on right now is this lease, because if the lease is approved, then I think it changes the conversation, and then it does need to be looked at again.
Okay, I'm gonna have to cut it off there because John Johansson's being very patient and saying, hey, my time's almost up compared if you look at the agenda. So we definitely want to have time for a good airport report. Thank you so much, Anna. I know you have been busy representing our area and involved in so many important issues since you took office, and we really appreciate it. But we miss you as being president too, so just putting that.
Sure. Well, I can't do both, but I'll put my contact information in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, John, would you please provide the airport report now?
I will do that. Thank you
you
for having me. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a great summer. I'll just go through quickly with the airport update, which I believe is posted on your website by now. We're still working on the parking garage construction. We'll be wrapping that up in October. We're making improvements to extend the life of the parking garage, primarily associated with the parking decks, and ensuring that we're not having issues with corrosion or deterioration of the parking decks. We will also be shutting it down early next spring to redo the fourth level. We did some work on it this year, but we've got a bunch more work to do, so it will be shut down early, hopefully before the peak summer tourism season. We talked a little bit about the Northlink project. That project was the EA was public noticed, and the determination by the FAA was a finding of no significant impact associated with that project. Of course, there's always impacts, but by FAA's definition, no significant impact. So the Northlink project on Long Raspberry Road has a bit of a green light there. As I understand it, starting work on construction of the access road, working from the aircraft parking area to the south toward Raspberry Road. We're having a master plan public meeting next week on September 14th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. The airport master plan is a plan for future development of the airport. And that meeting is going to be at the Coast in along Lake Hood in the McKinley Ballroom. And so if you're interested in having some participation or just interested in finding out about that, please show up. Then from September 14th to September 28th, there will kind of be a virtual meeting online where you can go and provide input to the planning effort. And that's there's a link here on the airport updates, www.ancmpuonline.com. Just a reminder that RVs generally, particularly if they have an AC unit on their roof, do not fit under the South Terminal Loop Bridge. So if you're driving to the arrivals curb, you need to exit before you go under that bridge. Exit to the left and go through the commercial vehicle area. A lot of construction going on at the airport. Some of it's winding down. We're working on Postmark Road. I think that's almost all done. Also doing a bit of work on the taxiway at the south side of the east-west parallel runways, and that's going on pretty much 7 days a week. That will be wrapping up in October for the year, and then continuing a second phase on next year. If you're looking for work, we have jobs. There's a link here for employment opportunities on the update, and I encourage you to share those with your friends and family. And then finally, if you're interested in anything associated with the airport or anything within DOT or other state agencies, sign up for Gov Delivery and get email notices of stuff associated with the airport or other infrastructure in Anchorage and elsewhere. And Kathy has asked me regularly to give kind of an update on what's going on with land leases and et cetera on the airport. So I'll try to be pretty brief with this, but we talked about North Link. That's getting under construction on the south side of the airport along Raspberry Road. FedEx has a proposed local Alaska cargo facility where they which will be directly across from the post office on Postmark Drive, and that is going to be a building for local Alaska cargo handling and sorting and an aircraft parking apron for their smaller aircraft. That project is in the environmental assessment process. They have a wetland permit for that project. Working on the environmental assessment. I think that will probably go out for public comment in about a month. Directly south of that is the site for Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage, which is aircraft parking and a warehouse. That project is just was public noticed. The environmental assessment, the draft environmental assessment was just public notice the other day. We are working to get notifications on OPN, online public notice, and also on our website at Anchorage Airport associated with that project. You may be familiar with the GA replacement parking that we are working on the design and environmental assessment for, associated with the proposed new air traffic control tower. The air traffic control tower will be displacing about 39, I believe it is, GA parking tie downs. And so FAA is working to, in concert with us, to develop a design for replacing those. And the current preferred alternative is adjacent to Echo parking on Lake Hood Drive, along Lake Hood Drive. The EA associated with that, which includes looking at an alternative on the east side of the Lake Hood Strip. That EA is expected to be out in December or January. It was initially thought they would have it out by now, but it's going to be December or January. So that project is moving along. we are kind of stalled with the T hangar project also along Lakewood Drive that a company is looking at developing. We're in discussions with them about possibly revising their plan on that. It looks like they are downsizing it a bit. So we're working with them on that. And then I think the only other one I can think of is the private hangar development on the east side of the Lakewood Strip on the south end of the strip. And that went out for competitive proposals. Only one was submitted, and we are currently working with that tenant, or we're waiting for that tenant to come to us and work on signing a lease agreement, but that lease has not yet been signed. So that is kind of a wrap up from me. If anybody has any questions or comments about that or other things, I'd be happy to try to entertain them.
Okay, John or Marnie, you have your hand raised, so.
John, thank you for a very comprehensive assessment. I really sort of appreciate that. With the hangar on the sort of southeast corner of the Lakewood Strip, I think we've submitted comments on that, and a lot of the neighbors are kind of watching it. And so when it gets to a point where they're looking at potentially coming up with a design or a building permit, we'd like some advance notice and look at ways to be involved. We're also going to reach out to the applicant once the lease has been awarded to maybe see if they can come meet with us and talk about what some options might be to, address some of the concerns the neighbors have. So I think,
John, I'd also, we've been talking for some time. I also encourage your land use committee to come talk to the airport management, about development on airport. If we could get a meeting scheduled for that, I know we've been talking about it for months. And
yep, no, we've been a bit behind. I think in working with Kathy, we will probably see if we can get one, maybe even scheduled this month. Check the director's schedule, and that'll be a good time for sort of an update and a re-engagement of some of the things we've been talking about. I also just want to clarify, just to be sure here, it sounds like that one of the alternatives, or the alternative you're looking at for the EA for tower location, is probably that original proposal where they were looking at putting parking east of the Lakewood Strip in that higher forested area. And is that one of the alternatives that's going to be carried forward for contrast? And John looks like he might have frozen there.
Oh, yeah, it does look like. John, can you hear us?
Yeah.
He just doesn't want to answer that question, is probably.
John's coming back in. We lost him. I'm admitting him right now.
Okay.
He's back in. He's connecting now.
All right. Thanks, Al.
And we'll
John,
see.
unmute.
He's over here.
Not quite there yet, it looks like.
Yeah, he's
He's there but muted. Okay.
You got to mute.
I'm sorry, my laptop died. I'm on my cell phone.
Oh,
So, John, I don't know if you heard my question before it died or not.
Well, I heard your comments about wanting to talk with the airport and the developer about the lot on the south side or on the east side of Lakewood Strip.
Okay.
That's the last I got.
Okay, so the second comment was that you mentioned that the EA for the tower relocation is going to look at an alternative that relocates Charlie parking to the east of the Lakewood Strip. And I'm assuming that's a contrasting alternative that is perhaps the original proposed location in that area between the neighborhood and the Lakewood Strip. And that's going to be evaluated as part of the EA.
That's correct. It's going to be evaluated as an alternative. It was originally under previous airport management, the preferred alternative. When Craig Campbell came on board, he decided that should be different and decided that that would be the alternative, and the preferred alternative going into the assessment would be over at Echo Parking.
Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate that. That's all my questions.
okay. I've got a couple questions, John. Turnagain Community Council has submitted a letter with regard to the EA on, oh, help me out, John Isaacs on the I think it was
Alaska Cargo?
Alaska,
Alaska Cargo,
yes,
yes.
yes, thank you. So when you say there's an EA public notice just the other day, I thought there had been one that we commented on, or maybe we commented on what should be included in the EA. All these
I
different
think,
projects, I'm getting a little confused about what we've done on which ones.
well, I believe you commented on the wetland permit. I'm
Okay,
99% sure you comment on the wetland permit, and you very probably, in my estimation, is probably commented on the actual lease application several years ago or a couple of years ago.
yes.
So this is the first draft of the EA that is just going out for public comment and was
Well,
public noticed in the newspaper yesterday or day before.
I haven't seen the email notice yet, but it'll probably show up any moment
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Inbox.
With Megan leaving, we've had a little bit of hiccup in getting this stuff out, but I believe tomorrow we're expecting to have a gov delivery notice get out to you guys and other folks, and also get it on OPN, online public notice.
Okay.
And that's for the Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage facility
Yeah.
south of the proposed FedEx facility in the Postmark Bog.
Right. And you know, do you have any idea what happens to our comments? Because, you know, they go into a black hole. We never get a response on how they've maybe were addressed and incorporated in, you know, what moves forward.
I have been assured that all those comments have been shared with the developers, our leasing folks, under the leadership of Terry Linseth, have assured me that those have been shared with the developer, and they will be something that is under consideration when we look at their proposed development plan.
Okay.
But those would certainly be things to re-comment on in the environmental assessment, if you're going to provide comments.
Okay. With regard to the FedEx, I know it's a little bit confusing to me because in June there was an AIDEA cargo lease application for what kind of had been the FedEx applicant, and then now we just received another one where comments are due September 23rd from ADA. We are talking about the same location, right? This is what we originally referred to as the FedEx expansion. Is that
well the new FedEx facility that is being worked on for intrastate cargo, for an aircraft parking apron and a warehouse, is not related to ADA. The ADA owns the FedEx hangar. Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority owns the FedEx hangar, and they have a lease that is about to expire. So the public notice that we're looking for comments on is a lease application to extend the land lease for that hangar. So that's totally independent of the construction project that is being looked at in the bog.
Okay, so unless we are concerned about a lease extension, we really don't need to focus on these ADA lease notices. Would that be
is correct?
Okay. You know, I had a feeling that there might be a difference, and later on when we've got that under old and new business, we might just want to, you know, bypass that one.
I meant to bring that one up in my brief here, and I just forgot about it. Yeah, it's basically just a renewal of a land lease for the hangar that is under lease to ADA, and they sublease it to FedEx.
Okay, Thank you for that clarification. One part of me thought, yeah, I bet I don't have this right, but I just wanted clarification since the map is kind of the same. Let's see if I had any other questions. When
Okay,
you referred
question
to the
also.
sorry, what?
Karen also has a question.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more thing and then we'll move on to Karen. With regard to that T hangar project along Lake Hood Drive, that's west of Echo parking lot, is that correct? That's the one west of it.
Yeah,
Echo.
kind of southwest, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we submitted comments on that, some pretty extensive comments and concerns about that when it initially was being proposed for an airport maintenance facility. And
Right.
then that idea kind of disappeared and we had this private entity apply for a lease application
Right.
several years ago. Then we reiterated all of our same concerns, including you know, I mean, and one of our big asks was retaining the wooded buffer, the upland part of that wooded buffer between to the very west part of that lot and then, you know, between Lakewood Drive and the west part of that lot so that that tree buffer remains and the footprint is smaller. So you mentioned that they might be looking at a plan revision that would reduce that footprint. I think that, you know, our strong feelings about that have not diminished over time. And I'm wondering how we can collaborate on that with the leasee to see if we can get that accomplished as part of the development, is to retain those trees as huge noise buffer. If that stuff goes, we're going to hear so much noise. It's not even going to be fun.
That's a good question. Would you do me a favor and put that on your list of things to discuss when your land use committee comes and meets with airport management? At that time, we may know more about what TLC is going to ask of us on modifications to their lease.
We'd be happy to. Yeah, because that's been a long time concern. And of course, it's been years now since that was first proposed for some kind of development, but it's never left my radar screen because the development of that would be huge if the upland trees are part of the deal. And so if that footprint can be reduced to just, unfortunately, the wetlands, but that would be you know, that because we did have drainage issue problems with that whole proposal too. But yeah, we'll see what we can work out. And so that would be great. Okay, I think that's all I had, and we will try and get that meeting scheduled, John. Thank you for continuing to remind us we need to do that. Now, let's see. Merle,
had a
you have your
question.
hand raised. Yes, Merle.
Hey, John, a couple of things. I attended the aviation board meeting on the 31st, and they mentioned a couple of things in that aviation board meeting that I didn't hear you touch on. And one of the things was that the airport was working with the municipality on a revised agreement for the Lakes Bernard Park area. And one of that was that it was probably going to not be the same size as what it currently was in the past. So that was one thing. The other thing was that I understood it that from the aviation board meeting that the meetings that you were talking about, a master plan, were going to be at the west, the Lakefront Hotel, as opposed to the West Coast Inn, and the Lakefront Hotel. It was a whole series of meetings. We're all back to back, including the master plan.
Okay, yeah, the Lake Spenard or Spenard Beach Park, we are in discussions with the Muni, although they are very preliminary, about taking back some of the frontage that's in the maintenance agreement we have with the Muni, the lake frontage, to provide 4 additional, I believe it's 4 additional aircraft tie downs that would relieve some of the float slip wait list. And so there are discussions there. They're very preliminary. So more to come on that. And the other issue, there are several meetings going on around the same time next week on the master plan. There's the 2 advisory committee, and I think a working group is what we're calling those folks. And one of those groups is primarily airline folks, and the other is pretty much everybody else. And so if you're a member on the advisory committee, which Turnagain Community Council has 1 representative on I believe it's called the advisory committee. They are having a meeting. So the other committee with the airlines is having a meeting with the airport. And then there's a public meeting for anybody else next week also. And that's the one I was mentioning, was the public meeting. I didn't mention the other 2 because those folks that are involved in those committees are already aware of those meetings, and it's not a general public meeting. But the one I mentioned in my update was for the general public meeting on the master plan, and I believe those are at different locations. I'm not positive on that, but I believe that's the case.
All right, the other thing is what you just indicated is that all the meetings should be public meetings and it should be public notice. And if you're not going to follow the Open Meetings Act, the State Open Meeting Act, please explain to us how these meetings are exempted. You know?
Well, that's a question for somebody else, Merle. You brought that up many times, and I don't know all the rules on that, but I know you've shared your concerns with people above me in the organization, and I would encourage you to continue to do that. I will let them know you brought the issue up again.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
John, who would just make that decision of what Merle just requested? If you don't know the rules, who would know the rules?
I don't really have an answer. Our legal folks, for starters, because it's a legal question. That's where the majority of our direction is coming from on that.
Okay. Okay.
But as Kathy and Merle, you may or may not know, we don't prevent people from going to the 2 advisory committee meetings. So if Merle would like to attend either of those meetings, he is welcome to attend and listen, but not participate. And there will be time given at the end of the meeting for any of those people that aren't actually on the committee to give comments, as Kathy, you have done many times in the past.
And the point being, John, that those meetings need to be publicly noticed. That's the public. You're not publicly noticing them, and especially the one with the airlines.
Yeah, I understand your concern. I don't have an answer for you, Merle.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for John Johansson? I know you've covered a lot of material, but it's important. It's important to us, and we've put in a lot of time and effort over the years commenting and providing our position on things. And at some point, we sure would like to see some indication that our comments are, that some of them are actually put in practice, and we can see the results to minimize impacts, because just the fact that when it was mentioned earlier with regard to Norlink, and the jets now will have the nose towards Sand Lake to try and minimize the neighbors to the south, which is very commendable, but that means they're headed north. That means the engines are pointing north. And it's highly likely that, you know, we in the Turnagain area will now hear additional cargo noise from that facility. And, you know, everything, it just keeps piling on top of everything else. And we really need to have some kind of comprehensive way where our input is not just accepted as far as, you know, we got your email, but really see some results of all the time and effort that so many of us have put into, you know, looking at these leases and other documents to weigh in on wetland permits, etc. So, but thank you, John, for your patience and all the information that you provided, and we will keep in touch.
You're welcome. See you next month.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, now we will move into, I heard somebody say something. If not, okay. So we'll move on to old and new business. And I think, as I had indicated, we did get a notice for this Ada Cargo Supplemental Postmark Bog lease application. I think I'm the one that put in Postmark Bog, and I should not have, as that's just a renewal of an existing lease of an existing facility. So with the body's approval, we will move on to the next item on the list. But I see, Karen, you've got your hand raised. So yep,
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kathy. I just wanted to double check with you, John, that yeah, it's a renewal for the lease for the same footprint of land, but is there any anticipated increase of number of flights, or is that not part of that lease agreement? That's part of airport work or something? To John Johansson, if he's
he may have, I know that one freezed I think he actually probably logged off. Al, would that be the case?
I still got him on here, but he's not
Yeah.
moving. I'm
Is
trying
he-
to have him to, I'm asking him to unmute. John? Can you unmute? And I have a question for you. Thank you.
Well, I know he showed up in two different boxes when the first one froze, and then that's still on the screen, but the second one,
I'm
think-
trying to pass the message on to him now.
okay,
Is that me?
John, yeah, John,
John Johansson.
oh, the wrong one. Okay, I hit the wrong button there. Yeah. John Johnson. He may, yeah, I don't think he's here.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
think he logged off once he was done with his report.
Yeah.
I would just ask then, Kathy, if you could have the land use committee meeting. Let's remember to put it on the agenda just to make sure that it is not a significant increase in FedEx traffic on the same AIDA footprint.
You know, and what I can do, if you don't mind putting a little burden on you, I can forward you the lease application notice.
Yeah.
And if you want to look through it and see what you might be able to tag as a red flag, if anything, that would
I'll
help.
do it.
That would
I'll
help
do it
me.
before the land use committee meeting.
And Kathy, I think one question, maybe one comment answer Karen's question. When they had the open house, they implied that they were primarily relocating some of the intra-Alaska cargo to this new location and freeing up some space. And they implied that there was not going to be an increase in FedEx traffic, but I'm not sure that makes complete sense. And I think it's still worth asking the question, but that's what they had said at the time.
Well, and I think we're talking again about two different things, which it can be confusing. I think the Ada lease is for the existing facility of FedEx that they own and are now leasing out to FedEx. That's not the expansion, but
Right.
it's the existing facility and the operations. And they just need to now, since they own the physical buildings, they need to renew their lease. And it's not the FedEx expansion, which is what you just described as far as, I know there's a lot to really keep track of. We know that. So let me make sure I write this down. So I'll email that lease application to you, Karen. And if you can take a look at it, see what you can make sense of, that would be helpful.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and bypass the that one, assuming that that understanding is where it needs to be. And move on to the Alaska Railroad lease application by the McCary family, which does potentially, would affect the Fish Creek Trail Connection project. And hopefully all of you are familiar with TCC's position that we took last November with regard to the trail route and specific conditions, like John Haxby did a great job of discussing earlier at this meeting. So I don't know if Spenard Community Council, I didn't go to their meeting last night, if they passed a resolution. I've been CC'd on and gotten, a fair amount of emails saying, we support this trail, please take action and oppose this lease. But, and I'll get to you in 1 second, because I see you have your hand raised. But I decided not to draft anything specific. I'm just putting it on the agenda for just any kind of discussion that anybody wants to throw out. And at minimum, what I can do is send our TCC resolution that we passed with regard to the trail route that we support and under specific conditions as part of our comments to the lease application of railroad land by the McCary family. And it pretty well speaks for itself, because as was pointed out, the only trail route we support in that northern part would go through the same land that the McCary family would like to have a long-term lease on. So I'm just gonna open it up for some general discussion, and if anybody needs more information before, or has questions, I can certainly try and address that, since I do have the lease application and it was emailed out with this meeting notice. But Anna, I know you want to jump in, so go ahead.
Yeah, just really briefly, and then I apologize that I'll have to jump off after this, but I was at Spenard's meeting last night, and they did pass a resolution opposing that lease, and so
Okay.
I don't have a copy of it handy, but just to confirm.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know Karen Button sent me a draft of it, but I don't know if they modified it in any way, so that's good to know that they did pass a resolution. Okay, opening
Yeah.
it for discussion. Who wants to jump in or have any thoughts about any action TCC would like to take on this proposed? The comments are due on, oh dear, let's see. Comments are due. Oh, where is my file on that? What happened to my file on that? There it is. On
September 21st.
that sounds right.
I can post it for you, Kathy.
Okay, thanks. Should have that right in front of me, but oh, here we go. Public notice. Yes, September 21st. Thank you, Al. And Al, could you screen share? Well, there's the lease, and then also at some point screen share the map of the proposed leased area, so that we can all have a good idea of the land that we're talking about.
Yeah, give me a second here.
Sure, and thank you for that.
Is that the McCary Railroad lease?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep, that's it. Thank you. So as you can see, where the Tony Knowles Coastal runs along the curved and downward line on the northern part of this graphic, and so it's land, to the south of that area, where there's a pretty tall fence that hugs the coastal trail on the south side. It's land within that area. It's all wooded right now, except for the access drive that the McCary family uses that they have for decades. I talked to Mr. McCary yesterday, and that access road has existed. Their family has, had a home there, and they've been residents there for many, many years, since the 1950s. Okay, so is everybody familiar then with what the McCary family is proposing is to lease that parcel that was on that map for a period of time not to exceed 95 years. And it's a pretty straightforward document from their perspective. What the notice doesn't provide, like airport lease notices, indicate an applicant how much they would pay, per acre or per square foot or something for 55 years is a typical airport lease time frame, so that you can see what kind of revenue the airport is generating over time from that lease. I noticed that this state entity, the railroad, did not include any kind of monetary indication of what the McCary family would pay for the lease of this land. So I don't know how much weight the railroad, whoever is going to potentially review this lease and approve or deny it, how much weight they put into how much revenue would be generated by this lease. It's something that, I thought about, but I don't have any information on.
What does page 2 of that thing say?
There was just one page. That's it.
That's all there is.
That's
Yeah.
the entire lease notice.
Isn't there a lease summary?
Oh, well, if there was, I did not get it or realized and didn't click on the right link.
Yeah, because I remember reading it. It said 8% of the appraised value.
Okay. So as was indicated in our earlier discussion about this, our resolution is very specific about the route that we would support. And at the northern end of it, the only route that for a trail extension would go through that land in kind of a switchback area that would connect up to the coastal trail. And
yes, it would duck underneath the McCary driveway.
Yeah, if you want to scroll down, Al, to those conditions, let's see, might be on page 2.
You can see it on the map.
Last
page of the map.
I know. Oh, okay, so
keep going.
Pardon?
that's the only graphic that was attached to our resolution. So
No, that's the graphic.
Thank you so much. Let's see.
The notes at the bottom.
Yeah, okay. So if we can just not move it. There we go. Thank you, John. Hey, Al, if you want to go ahead and scroll down to that box language, thank you.
Here?
That's where it duck under McCary driveway with tunnel to connect to coastal trail. In my discussion with Mr. McCary, when I mentioned that, he did not know about that potential. And that was the only way that we would, because we recognized the conflicts that would an at-grade coastal trail connection, Fish Creek Trail connection, and their drive into their property on railroad land. There'd be a conflict, especially biker speed. We got e-bikes now for vehicles to, cross at the same time, and it could be potentially a dangerous situation. And I'm sure we considered all that when we came up with our conditions last year and included them in our November resolution. So tunneling under, he was not aware of that potential option. And he felt pretty good about that, because he was concerned about that at grade situation that would occur if the trail was built without tunneling it under. So Karen, I see you've got your hand raised, and I don't know if anybody else is in the queue, but Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for explaining the situation for everyone, catching us up. I'm glad to hear that Mr. McCary was understanding about the potential attempted fix for getting public access, improving everybody's access to our world-class trail. Why is the family, does anybody have any insight to why is the family seeking this lease now? Is it to prevent the trail from being hooked up, or is it to legalize their driveway or some other reason? And I'm sorry, I'm missing your name, Mr. John H. It sounds like you are a neighbor. Do you have any insight into the trail connection issue that you want to share?
With respect to what pretty much all of the concerns that I have were addressed in the Turnagain Community Council resolution, and had specifically to do with the size of the trail, the location of the trail at the southern edge, and also at the northern connection where it would impact Mr. McCary, so that he wasn't impacted. I'm on the southern edge, the drawing that you see up right now, off of Resolution Drive, and we were concerned that number one, the DOT and AMATs and MOA and the rest of them, these guys are pretty secretive and they don't share anything with anybody and tell us what's going to happen at all until they show up with a bunch of surveyors in your backyard like they did to me. So, they, rather than leave this up to a bunch of people to say, yeah, we support the trail, and then they come up and they say, well, we're going to put a bridge through your backyard. Well, I'm not interested in that, and I don't think anybody else was interested in it when they came and they walked our property and saw what was really going to happen. So, we put together the actual location where we wanted the trail, and the location, size, the whole 9 yards, to minimize the impacts to ourselves. The same thing to minimize the impacts up at Mr. McCary's property and his driveway. There are going to be supposedly roughly 1,000 trips a day, according to the AMATS letter. 1,000 users on this a day. If you consider it's going to be used 10 hours a day, that's 100 an hour, one every 1.5 every minute. So, it's going to drag a lot of homeless people in there, whether you like it or you don't, and or you agree or you don't agree. And the homeless, God bless them, they do what they want to do, and they want to sit around with their friends at the campfire. And we've got an estuary with forest and woods all around there, and we could darn well end up with another Maui. There's no firefighting or fire protection inside this area, and you're going to limit. There's limited access even from the existing streets in Lusac or other places like that. And that the homeless people are going to be in there camping no different than they do anywhere else. And they have fires, and we've got a tinderbox where we have burn bans that the people that live in these areas abide by them, but the people that are homeless, they don't necessarily abide by them. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just telling you the reality. So do I have concerns about this? Yeah, I do. It needs to be done in the way that we approve, no more, no less. And before we go about spouting off to anybody, I think that we ought to find out exactly what the plan is. Are they planning to build it the way that we've shown it here and we've agreed to, or we've basically made a resolution on, or if the answer is no, then our support is removed.
So, so yeah, I mean, you know, we worked very hard and collaborated with our land use committee, worked hard to draft the wording carefully. And, you know, that thing passed with full support, to my best of my recollection.
Yeah, unanimous.
And so, you know, the focus here is we've got this lease application at this point in time that has a comment period. Comments are due on September 21st. And then John's raised and others have raised the very kind of parallel concerns or desire for some clarification with regard to the project itself, the trail project itself, at where it's at in terms of process. And literally now they've referred to that as a preferred alternative, and we were never noticed that they'd made a decision about a preferred alternative. So we don't know if they took into consideration our conditions and our locations at all. So we clearly need to have an update from the team. Sounds like another land use committee. So yeah, that passed 19-0. So
before we
need
comment
to have
on
another
this,
land use committee, invite them to get some answers, you know, not in connection with this lease application, but just for our own purposes, since now we have more information, not from them, but from me listening in on YouTube to the AMAT's policy committee meeting last week that I couldn't attend, that they referred to this as, you know, a preferred alternative route. And we don't.
Before we comment to them, Kathy, before we comment to them, shouldn't we ask for, look, show us exactly what the plan is. You've already said it's the preferred route. Are you meeting our conditions of support, or are you not? If you're not meeting our conditions of support, our support is withdrawn. If you are meeting them, then we do support it. But otherwise, I think the only comment to the railroad would be, look, here are our conditions of approval. These are what we've agreed through our resolution. And anything that doesn't match this, we don't support.
So, but in essence, if their alternative includes all of our conditions, would we want to take a position on the railroad lease application? That's kind of where we've got to focus now on tonight.
I don't think I'd do anything until such time as we understand what they're going to do, what the AMATs and the DOT and what the engineers and what Parks and Rec. Our position could be, we could say we support what you're, don't do it. And if we say don't lease it to the McCarrys, and then the DOT and the rest of them come back and say, well, we kind of used your stuff, but we aren't going to do it that way. But we want you to support us anyway. I mean, it's like, you put the baby before the bathwater. Tell us what you're going to do before we tell you whether we agree or we don't agree with the lease application. Because if they don't do what we've asked for in our resolution, then we're not supporting the trail commit. Then we're not supporting the trail. Then we would support the lease. If they did everything that we asked for in our resolution, then we would say we support declining the lease.
From what others have explained, I don't understand how you get the trail you've specifically requested if the lease goes through. There's no caveats in the lease draft we're looking at that says, and a trail can go through here and the McCarrys are okay with it. It just transfers ownership of the land that the trail would go through to the McCarrys for 95 years. So us withholding support or what have you won't change. If this railroad lease to the McCarrys goes through, you don't get the trail you asked for.
Maybe.
Am I understand?
Maybe they have 5 alternates that they can choose from. they have 5 different alternates that are there. And before yesterday or the day before, or whenever the AMATS letter came out, we didn't have a clue that that was a preferred route. No clue. Did anybody else?
No, no. No, we were never formally notified by any member of the team, Noah from the state or Taylor Keegan from the Parks Department or
Which all seems like really
no,
bad,
I mean, nobody.
really poor work on their part. But my understanding is your specific trail that you supported through resolution goes through the property the McCarrys are trying to lease.
That
Isn't that the case?
specifically specifically under the conditions that we determined are in the resolution.
Okay, so with so we are against that permit, that lease being done, or we're not getting the trail we want.
I've worked with her. She's resolution.
You know, the one thing that I verbalized to somebody just today, could have been Dan, I don't remember, or maybe you, John, or maybe you, John Isaacs. I don't remember. I've had so many conversations today. Is what we don't know, and I did not think to ask Mr. McCleary when I talked to him yesterday was if they got the lease, if they were awarded the lease, would they allow for the trail connection to go ahead and be built on their leased land as long as it was tunneled under the driveway, which did that particular, part of what I said. He said, oh, well, we didn't ever think of that, or nothing like that was ever told us that that was something that could be done. So it could open up the possibility that they could get their lease with those caveats and conditions, like you were saying, Karen, that, and that could be included in any kind of comment that we provide on this lease application, is that we don't have a problem with it as long as, if it's granted, the trail route that Turnagain Community Council specifically footprint supports, including the tunneling under the private drive, could still be built and connected up to the coastal trail. I mean, seems like it might be an option that is possible, but we don't have any confirmation from any parties that would even be a consideration. So
if it's not in this lease, why would that happen? Why
well,
there would
I don't
be
know.
no
I mean,
mechanism.
So
it seems like this lease could be fine in 6 months once we worked out that caveat that the trail would go under the driveway in this lease would be in there. But until then, there's no mechanism to provide for the trail you guys want if this lease goes forward.
Harrison, you've had your hand up. Why don't you jump in?
Other than the fact that they could continue due north in the existing right of way, and they could connect directly to the trail without making a turn.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Yeah, go ahead, Harrison.
I don't think I had my hand up the longest, but
Oh, well, who else has their hand up? Who am I?
John and Marnie.
Oh,
Put
Pat,
your
I didn't
hand up.
realize.
I think it was
Sorry,
Pat.
Pat, that yellow hand is kind of blending in with your ceiling, so I didn't.
Harrison had his up before me, so if he has something to say, I'd definitely let him.
Okay, why don't you
go
do
first.
Harrison and then Pat and then John Isaac?
Yeah, no, I think I was just I mean, similar comments to what Karen was making, but I think, I mean, is the idea that that we wouldn't oppose this, or that we would equivocate on that, or not come out with with a forceful resolution. I what kind of message does that send about we already, I mean, I know I'm just coming into this, but there was already a resolution put forth to propose this, and yeah, I mean, we don't have these assurances that it'll necessarily be followed that, but what chance do we have that will happen if you know, if we throw the whole thing, I mean, it seems like we risk throwing it all away if we allow this to happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
Pat,
Yeah.
Same same kind of comment. I think that we don't want to throw anything else in there that's going to confuse them. It doesn't matter what the plan is now. That land should not be leased for 95 years to a private entity. Especially when we've been trying to get that trail in for, I don't know how many years since we put the coastal trail in. So I would think we should have a resolution to oppose this lease and don't put anything about any possible tunnel or anything. We have money now for, but that doesn't include a tunnel. So,
where's your information coming from? Because I've not heard about that.
The money, read the article. There's money for the trail.
No, I mean, there's no money to tunnel the trail under the McCary.
Well, don't worry about that part. Just right now we're opposed.
No, I
to
mean, you
lease.
just said there's no money to tunnel the trail under the McCary driveway. And again,
go to John.
We don't know if that's true or not.
Here's
Isaac.
a potential solution. I think, number one, it's been noted that there is no explanation as to what the public purpose of this lease is. That's missing from the application. The second thing is that we could also ask them to postpone taking any action on this until there is clarity on what is happening with the Fish Creek Trail, because it's premature to give that lease without the public purpose and without clarity on where the Fish Creek Trail is going. That's one potential solution.
Okay, is there anybody else that wants to? Sorry, let's see. Well, hang on, John Haxby. Leslie, yes, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hey, I guess I'm a little concerned because it just appears that there's a family trying to block access to a connection that the voters approved in 2021. And the feds are matching funding for this, and it's a connection that we all agree with. And I'm opposed to the lease personally.
Okay. Yeah, that's there is, I think we can all presume, but all it is supposition that this lease application was submitted now specifically to because they were concerned about the trail going through the area of, in their backyard, so to speak, as far as the land that they do own, it's surrounding that, and they do need that driveway to access their land on airport property. And it's been there since
not airport property.
Excuse me, railroad property. Thank you, Dan. So, I mean, none of us know, and I didn't specifically ask Mr. McCary, but I think we can all presume that that's a pretty good supposition. So, at this point, we do need to wrap this up, and we also will have to extend our meeting as we get closer to 9 because we still have a fair amount on our agenda. All of this has been important discussion. So
I'm going to propose
what is the wish of the body?
I propose that we oppose this lease. I move that we propose this lease. I need a second.
Second.
Who seconded it? Sorry.
Dan Gleason.
Pat, did you second?
I'm willing to.
I'm willing. I was going to second. Yes.
Oh, Harrison, was that you that seconded it?
I think Harrison seconded before I did.
Yeah, either way, doesn't matter.
Let's use Harrison.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
New people.
I think that the timing of this lease application is suspect. I think that we have to consider that they didn't take into account, or the leasee or the lease application people didn't understand that the plan was to put a tunnel underneath their private drive. And I think that we just need to come out as a community council against this lease.
Okay, is there any other discussion about the motion? The one thing I would say, Dan, is I wouldn't want us to definitively say that the plan is to tunnel under the private drive. We don't know that yet. We have had zero communication from the trail project team to actually say, yes, Turnagain Council, we read every condition in your resolution from November, and we will comply with every one of them, including tunneling it under. We have no assurance that that's part of the plan. Preferred alternative, because they haven't told us what it is yet.
Kathy, the resolution should be, we oppose the lease, period. I mean, we
Period.
don't.
Yeah, we oppose the lease. That's the motion.
I agree.
Well, for whoever crafts this comment letter, it's got to have a little bit more than that in it. I
Well,
think
you don't need to go
why.
in, don't go into detail about the tunnel or anything, but it does need to, basically, you want to say, we oppose the lease.
Yeah, we can say the reasons why we oppose it.
Yeah, we
don't say the reasons why we
question.
oppose it. I'd feel uncomfortable as acting president signing anything that was so,
He
What's
said
the will of the body?
we would.
No, we can't.
What
We
is the
would.
will of the
We
body?
would.
Yes, we
so
would.
excuse me. So what are the reasons specifically that we want to include
Because
in our comments so that we're very clear?
Because it would block access to this, this voter approved plan.
This
There
would
wasn't a
this
voter
would
approved
basically
plan yet.
negate the north option 3 of the design study to access the coastal trail for option 3.
I thought it was option. Is that option?
That's option 3.
Option 3A or B?
It's just 3.
No,
On
there
the
was
north end, it's
another.
3.
Okay, well, I'd have to look at the map, but I'll make a note to look at map to make sure that's accurate, but thank you.
Call a question.
Okay, does the second concur about calling the question?
Yeah.
Harrison? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, so all in favor of a motion that would essentially say that Turnagain Community Council opposes the proposed lease application submitted by the Alaska Railroad, by the McCary family, to lease the property, and then we can refer to it, the description in the lease application. And the rationale is that this lease, approval of this lease, would likely negate, we can't say definitively because we don't know, but likely negate the trail to be built per option 3. Okay, all in favor, raise your hands. So let's see, we got 2, 3, 4, 5.
Who gets to vote on this stuff?
I believe all of you, are you all members of Turnagain Community Council? Do you live within the community council boundaries?
I live. How do you vote?
That does include
Raise your hand.
Cammy, Adana, Johnny.
I'm sorry, what was that
I don't know if they're listening, but Cammy, Adana, and Johnny, they do live in the neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Dustin, I'm not sure, you haven't spoken. So do you live within the community council boundaries?
Hi, yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're all members attending this evening. So all in favor of Dan's motion, please raise your hand. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And oppose. I'm going to oppose this one.
Gotta lower your hands.
Yeah, everybody who voted yes, please lower your hand. So now these will be a no vote. So 1, 2, 3. I've seen clapping hands somewhere. Merle, are you voting or are you clapping? I'm going to take that as a, well, now it disappeared. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I
5.
wanted to, hold on a minute, Kathy.
Yep, Merle. Are you?
My hand was raised. And one thing I noticed about this whole meeting, every time I raise my hand, sometime it just goes away. I don't know what's going on. So I don't like the way these meetings are being run.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Merle.
Well, no,
I'm
you're
doing
not,
the,
because you keep doing it. You're taking our hands down. Who's running the meeting?
well, Al is hosting the meeting. I'm not controlling any of that.
I'm
Al,
not taking down anything at all, but his screen whole
Yeah.
night has been blurring up and down all which ways.
yeah,
Now
Merle,
it's up.
well, you've had technical problems. Right now you're showing clapping hands and now they just disappeared. So I apologize that we're not sure when you're weighing in or want to weigh in. And you can verbally say if your vote is a yes or a no on this.
I'm a no.
You're a no. Okay.
I'm a no.
Okay,
No.
thank you, Meryl. And I appreciate you drawing that to my attention. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no votes. And I think I got everybody. Was that confirmed by everybody? I
Yeah.
saw 7 no's. Okay, so that motion passes by 1 vote. And probably John Isaacs, I'll rely on you maybe to help me craft that comment so that we can submit it by the September 21st deadline, comment deadline. Because
Kathy, I'd be happy to help too, Kathy, if you want.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, this
yeah.
is Kathleen. I have a question. Can we also, as a council or the land use committee, or I would be willing to help the land use committee with this, to make inquiries as to what, we, as John Haxby pointed out, we don't know what their plan is. Can we, as a council, contact them and say, what is the plan? If you aren't releasing information, when are you releasing information? Because we are, I mean, in essence, I'm opposed to the lease as well, but we are operating in the dark and we don't know anything that they have planned or what they might do based on public lack of support or, active opposition to the McCary lease. I mean, I think it's completely wrong in principle, but I don't trust anybody regarding this. And I would like to know what the trail plan is. If it's the preferred trail plan, they need to publish that. So I'm willing to help on this. I just don't know if it's land use committee or the council or whatever, but I do think that we're owed some answers after a year and a half.
Totally
In
agree.
detail.
I think probably everybody, whether you voted yes or no on this lease, I think we can all agree that that's an important to know, especially now that they've actually referenced calling, at least some version of the trail along the railroad right away at we don't know where.
Yeah, I think one of us can call and see if
You know
we can
what?
get information.
Dawn, would you like to take that on?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yep.
John, if
So
I can help you, this is Kathleen. Let
Okay.
me know.
Thanks, Kathleen.
so you'll call somebody on the team. Do you
Yes.
know who you
Yep,
would
I'll call either Taylor or I'll call one of the AMAT's team folks.
Okay. Because and we certainly could schedule a land use committee meeting for just this topic, and we'd probably throw in another 2 because we've got so many things going on. Because yeah, we do need an update. We do need an update. Pat, you still have your hand up. So go ahead, Pat. Looks like you
I
wanna say
move
something.
that we extend the meeting to 9:15.
Thank you. We're gonna need more time than that,
Move.
but anyway, we'll start with that. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan.
My bedtime's 10 o'clock, by the way.
Okay. We'll try not to keep you up too much later than that. Thanks, Al. So is there any objection to extending the meeting? If not, that is the thing, and thank you, Pat, for keeping an eye on the clock. Okay, so John Isaacs, you will call a member of the trail team and get more information about preferred alternative. And, why don't you go ahead and say, and
Where they're on the
sometime this
process.
month,
Yeah.
meet with the land use committee
Yep.
to get updated on the project. Would that be a fair?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your input on this proposal. Okay, so now, the next item on the agenda is something that we need to do because, for those of you who are regular members, we did not have anything to propose at our June 1 meeting with regard to ranking of our annual CIP list that we're asked to do every year that includes road projects, trail projects. And so it was up to the land use committee meeting, and we met on June 14th. And that's what I submitted to the municipality because there was a comment deadline on the 15th. And but then that means we do have to ratify this to make it official. And that's what we're here to do now. So thanks Al for putting that on the screen. So this is what the land use committee committee submitted. I did on behalf of the land use committee and the board. The board approved this as well. And so it doesn't change a lot from the previous years. What was the biggest jump? Let me see. There was one project where we kind of moved, Wisconsin Street. We bumped that up from, if you can scroll down just a tad there. Yeah, it was 12 for last year, so to speak. And we moved it up to number 7. But other than that, we didn't really, and Spenard Beach Park amenities, we did move up 3 slots. It will be interesting to hear more about what the airport and parks are talking about with regard to Spenard Beach Park. And I wish they would have included Spenard and community councils in that dialogue. I don't know why they haven't. That's so frustrating. We did just put a lot of amenities in last a year ago, August, and we have a phase 2 planned for that park. And so we wanted to put that a little bit higher priority. So does anybody have any questions on the list as it is now?
Kathy? It's
Sorry. Now I've got to look for hands, don't I?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Barney, and then Pat.
Thanks. Just a quick question. Why is the Tony Nose Coastal Trail 1 and Turnigan Street Upgrade 2? It seems Turnigan Street Upgrade seems to be a higher priority for our community, our neighborhood, whereas Coastal Trail is a broad city priority.
Well, and honestly, I looked back on that is an error that we moved that to number 1. That was our number 1 project last year as well. And the reason why we had thought that that's just really important is because literally the trail is falling off the cliff out at the point. I mean, it's just, and this will, as those of you who remember, if you lived here in the 90s, mid 90s, the coastal trail in that same area fell off the bluff. And so it was moved inland. Now it won't take much time before the existing trail in that same area at the point is gonna fall off the bluff. And the land keeps eroding anywhere from, 2 to 6 feet a year. So the coastal trail is in major, major peril if we don't have high priority for that erosion situation to get addressed. It'll involve the Muni, it'll involve the Corps, it'll involve the airport, but lots and lots of federal money is being funneled into Alaska right now. And this definitely deserves to get some funding. Way back when, it's been years, when they did I can't remember the word, starts with an R. They did a minimal kind of study of what it would cost. It was 40 million. That's been several years ago.
Okay.
So the price tag is a lot higher. That's why the body still felt like that was number one. Turnagain has been, then Turnagain Street is definitely,
Yeah.
So that was our rationale.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah.
So, it's my turn.
Yes, Pat. Yes, thank you.
Sorry. I move that we approve the submission of this item to the municipality.
Can I have you amend your motion? Because it already has been submitted.
Right. We're approving I'm moving that we approve this submission of this item.
Okay,
to
so
the
we're
municipality.
okay. Technically, we have to ratify it, but I get your point. So, okay, Pat R. Anybody else? And I need a second, please.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Any more discussion on this list? And does everybody, does anybody want to amend it in any way? If not, let me make sure I'm not missing a raised hand here. Let's go ahead and vote on Pat's motion. So all in favor of ratifying the list that was submitted last June, please raise your hand. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think Merle has his hand raised. I hope. Merle, do you have your hand raised? Merle, are you there?
No.
No, you're a no. Okay, well, we're voting on yeses now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. And we know we have at least one no by Merle. Does anybody, and so everybody who said yes, please lower your hands. And Karen, if you want to lower your hand, that would be good.
Kathy, I did not vote one way or the other. I'm
Okay,
just neutral on it.
Okay, so does anybody oppose this list, the ratification of this list? Okay, no. So that motion passes 12-0. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the next item, which is
You need to make sure that you have one abstention, or do you just want to not vote?
well, I tell you, to be honest, Dan, when I've been the president or running meetings, I've never asked for abstentions. It's nothing I've ever recorded, to be honest. Not
Okay.
under my watch, but thanks. Okay. And so the next item is, we did get a notice that, as the Muni sends out every year, the liquor licenses that are coming up for renewal, and there was a laundry list of them, but only one is located within Turnagain Community Council boundaries, as we pretty much all know, and that's the Rustic Goat. And so they used to ask if councils opposed or supported it. They don't do that anymore. What they do is they ask the community councils to consider it. And if you have a problem with any proposal, you can request a public hearing. It has to be in the form of a resolution. I didn't draft one, but we could on the fly if necessary. And the comment deadline is October 15th. So this would be just a discussion of whether we want to take any action on this. If we take no action, that that means we're not weighing in on it and or, it's a given that we support it. We don't oppose it. If anybody has a problem with it, we would ask for a public hearing. So anybody have any comments about that? About Rustic Goat, and this would be for the 2024-2025. It's a 2-year renewal. So Pat.
My comment would be, I think they've been a good neighbor. They've been doing well. And I think that we should not object to their application.
Okay.
For the record,
don't weigh
sorry,
in on it.
Kathleen. This is Kathleen. Just weighing in. They have not been a good neighbor to the people on the south side of Northern Lights and Jernigan Street.
Oh.
So just saying.
Could you elaborate on that?
No, I'm not going to. I brought it up many times before, and I don't want to waste our time doing it.
Okay. Can I ask if it is specifically related to the liquor license that they have, or is it other?
It is not.
It is not
It is
the
not,
liquor license.
yeah.
Well, okay, then, that's something we have to consider as well. This is specific to renewal of their liquor license.
Right. I understand that. That's why I'm not going to elaborate.
Okay. Okay, Karen. Karen, did you have any comments? You're muted, so if you
Yeah,
want-
I'm sorry. I was trying to get back. Does the renewal permit make any mention of any specific like DUIs associated with leaving or anything like that? I don't have any particular thing against the renewal. I was just curious what kind of information we have to work with.
We have zero information to work with. The email that I got just says it's to community councils saying each year they're required the clerk to notify all councils of all liquor license located within their boundaries that will be renewed by the assembly, and to comply with the code. They attached a spreadsheet, which all of them that are up for renewal and what community council they are located in. And like I said, Rustic Goat is the only one. There's no other link to anything specific. There's no data. There's no information provided at all.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other discussion? So is the consensus is we do not want to create, we don't have to really vote if it's just the consensus is we're not going to take any action and request a public hearing. Is that correct? Okay. Let me write that down. Okay, thank you. Let me write this down. And the next items on our agenda or our land use committee committee reports. So John, if you want to kind of briefly go over master plan update, and I put goals and objectives, which we don't have any to look at, which is another big ball I've dropped, but we have already talked about it to a certain degree while John Johansson was here. So with regard to
I'll give a quick update.
Okay.
They did put out some draft goals and objectives at the last advisory committee meeting. We did provide some comments as advisory committee members on them at that meeting. We had a land use committee meeting afterwards in which we decided to add some additional comments and goals and objectives, but we have not consolidated those yet. And it's something I think we need to do and get into them certainly this month. So Kathy, I think that's what you and I need to look at what the notes said and just look at getting those in, and we can kind of inform the council members at our next meeting. So that's my suggestion there.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, let's see, what did I just do with my agenda? I put it
Okay, so
in
the next one's the replat.
liquor license. I don't know why I did that. Okay, yes, thank you. Woodland Park development, yeah. So, last night, the JJ Brooks and his fellow associates, they had applied for a replat of all the individual plats that are west of the Barber Street cul-de-sac and east of the parking lot into one lot. So that was the specific request of a replat that went before the planning board last night. It was a public hearing that was held, and we really didn't get a lot of, it's not because they didn't do their job of trying to notify it. It was just a glitch that we as a council didn't really get a lot of heads up on that. So, but I attended along with Steve Montooth and Dan Gleason, and we all three submitted testimony last evening. And to varying degrees, we stressed that the traffic impact issues on Turnagain Street as a result of any development, JJ housing is an issue and concern. The Northern Lights mature landscaping that was put in as part of the upgrade to Northern Lights in the 1980s. The northern portions of what now is a consolidated plat will overlap some of that landscaping, and JJ has made it clear that he may remove a fair amount of that landscaping so that he can do his vision, and he talks in such vague terms that we really wouldn't know what he may or may not do. So we at minimum ask for a note on the plat that they be preserved as per our resolution opposing that whole disposal of public land last year. Really nothing that any of the three of us said made any difference to the planning board or to the municipality. Francis McLaughlin was the senior planner that was overseeing this project for the Muni, and they pretty well dismissed it and said, well, JJ's going to have to provide landscaping. It's going to require an L1 or an L3 or something per city code, and they just kind of ignored the fact that they wouldn't have to do any landscaping if they just leave what's there alone. And so bottom line is they approved the replat of, I believe it was 7 lots into one plat. And unless something comes up, that'll be the last, that was the last time that the public can weigh in at any kind of public hearing or any body associated with the municipality on the proposal for development of that land by JJ. So that's what happened last night. And, now it's a matter of keeping the lines of communication open with JJ so that he still doesn't, he kind of spoke, and his representative spoke out of both sides saying, we don't even have a plan yet. We can't share anything, to our plan shows this, or our plan is what we want to do that. And that's where we're at right now. So John, if you want to weigh in, John Isaac.
Yeah, I guess a couple items. One of the plat notes indicated that the traffic department requested some information on traffic projections. And I think that's something we're going to want to follow up on. I know you had conversations with JJ, who said he did something with some simple calculations, but that's not necessarily an answer that we want to accept. So I think talking to the traffic department and asking them more about the requirement is one. The second thing is there may be, depending on the density of the development he's proposing for an R3, there may be a chance that it's going to require a planned unit development or a conditional use if it exceeds a certain density. That's something else we're going to have to look at. Maybe that will bring that up for public hearing again. And then I guess the third thing is just to sort of kind of keep track of when he does put some plans together, find a way to get him to share them with us or have a chance to look at them. That's kind of my 2 cents. It's something we'll just have to kind of keep and continued eye on. I don't know if there will be, like you said, another public hearing, but we need to sort of keep on JJ and keep an eye on what he's doing. It looks like Steve Montooth has a comment.
Okay, Steve, yes. You're muted, Steve, sorry. Can you unmute yourself?
I talked to Randy Riddle of the traffic research folks, and he was saying that I was talking to him about the trouble with the traffic and the density. He said that they probably wouldn't be making any comment until they actually got a little more information about how many units or what it would look like. When I talked with JJ yesterday, he said there was going to be 35 units on that parcel. And I would strongly encourage everybody who's listening to my voice to go over to that property, which is right directly across the street of Turnagain Street from the Rusty Goat. And if you go down this alleyway, that is the southern border of that property, and then it stops at the cul-de-sac at Barber Street. If we have 35 units in that area, what are we talking about as far as how many vehicles? And we know that on your normal average one bedroom apartment, you got 1.6 vehicles. And I know there's some studio apartments involved with this, so we really don't know how many cars, but we know it exceeds over 30. So I would appreciate, I'll leave my email address, but I would really appreciate if anybody has some good ideas about how you could manage this traffic. From the alleyway to the light is 6 car lengths. So having, on a busy day, having all the vehicles from 35 units going out that alleyway, turn right to get to Northern Lights is impossible. So I would suggest everybody go down that alleyway, take a look at it. We don't know if they're going to could widen it. Go down to Barber Street, turn right, and try to think if there's any other place what we could do to make that livable. I mean, my God, to go 10 blocks out of your way just to get to Northern Lights doesn't make a lot of sense. But like I said, I'll leave my email address, and if you have, please do this. And if you have any ideas about what the best way to do this would be, I'd appreciate it. I didn't get the sense that anybody is really looking that far ahead, including the developer. So.
Yeah, thanks. And before anybody says anything else, I need another motion to extend for another 5 minutes, please. Well, let's see, what else is left on the agenda? Am I gonna need 10?
And Pat had her hand up, Kathy.
Hang on, Steve, Al.
I still move. Another 10 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you,
Second.
Karen.
John seconds.
Thank you. Okay. So were you done, Steve, on your comment?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to what happened last night? Pat?
Regarding the landscaping, there is a portion, I'm not sure how far north that property is going, but there is a portion of the landscaping that is state. And I'm sure that they've platted that out, but you can't touch the state landscaping.
You know, I know when West Northern Lights was widened in the 1980s,
Right.
mid-80s, it was not a state project. It was a city project.
It is, no, that is state property. I have that from platting. There's a portion of it that is state. The Tobish was part of that, and he said don't worry about that. There's a portion of that landscaping that is state. Now, the platted land that he's purchased should not affect the state landscaping, but we should be sure that he doesn't accidentally do that.
Well, what they did say last night, they didn't refer to state or muni, but they referred to road right of way. And they
Point
said,
of order.
looks like to them
Point of
that
order.
the northern the northern line of the replat combined, and the individual ones until last night will overlap the southern area of the landscaping by, they said 5 feet. We're
Excuse me.
skeptical about that. Sorry, Dan, what?
Did we move to extend?
Oh, yes. Well, we did. We didn't vote. I apologize.
And
Does anybody oppose for the extension? Thanks, Dan. Anybody, any opposition?
I'll
None?
second. I
Okay.
don't know if that happened.
Yep, and I got that down.
Okay.
So unless there's any objection, we have already extended a little bit, so I apologize. Getting kind of tired. So,
I mean, I suggest we keep an eye on what's going on with that and just make sure that he isn't going past his line into state property.
Pat, if you can dig up anything more definitive about that, that would be very
That
helpful.
was, I don't have to dig it up, and that, it should be in the plating department. They should have that.
There was no mention of it, so
Whether or not the
Can I-
road itself may
can
be
I-
currently
can I share my
maintained by the
s-
municipality at that point, but the land that was part of the state development there. The state
Can I-
developed it.
Can I
It was
share
a
my
state
screen really
project.
quickly? I don't want to
sorry.
take too long, but I
Harrison.
have it pulled up right now.
Oh,
Where
yeah,
the
yes,
property
go
line
ahead.
ends,
Thank
superimposed on
you.
a map.
That would be nice to have a visual.
So let's see here.
Again, I'm not sure there's much we can do about it other than to sort of keep an
You
eye.
guys see
You know,
this?
I'd like to keep moving,
Thank
not
you.
spend
So
too
you
much
can
time debating
see
this.
the replat, he already owns, I think, the one, he owns the parking lot one and the one to the east. And so it was the replat of, oh no, that's not true, because it was 7 lots. So those 7 lots east of the parking lot is what was replatted into one last night. And as you can see, thank you so much, Harrison, you can see it overlaps a fair amount. And of course, most of those spruce trees don't exist anymore. Parks and Rec have cut them down because of spruce bark beetle infestation. What's left is, at the top are mountain ash trees, huge lilac bushes, and then down lower it's mugo pines and false spirea. And so if he interferes with the landscaping up to, his now, he hasn't purchased the property yet, but now getting plating approval for the replat, that's his next step. I mean, I'm sure he's on the phone today, starting the process of purchasing, which is already approved by the assembly through a generic resolution or ordinance they passed last year. So you can see that landscaping potentially would be affected. And we had asked that a plat note be put on the plat, approval of the replat, that be preserved. It's what we included in our resolution when we opposed the project last year, and they ignored all that. The planning board ignored all that. So that's where we're at on that. So yeah, we need to keep, it's kind of like with the airport and keeping track of these lease applications. It's with so many things where we, the Fish Creek Trail connection, the devil's in the details. We can't just go, it'll be okay, they're approving it, it's fine. We need to ensure that the integrity of our area of Turnagain in this, it's both on the eastern end on those 2 projects, that they respect what we have had and what's been there, and then move forward with projects that complement, not take away from what's special about Turnagain. And we want it enhanced, not remove, because other people from other parts of town think this is the better way to go. That's my personal opinion. I think that's how we should view Turnagain Community Council's role in when we weigh in on and track these things. So yeah, John says we need to keep following this, and he's absolutely right. So another land use committee meeting perhaps in order to invite JJ and see if he would dialogue with us some more. Okay, so unless there's anybody else that wants to weigh in on that, that was just report. So John, if you'd like to just briefly weigh in on the proposal for our zoning district.
Well, I'll do the remaining 2 very quickly.
Okay.
so as Anna has mentioned that there is a new bill on the table that is going to reduce the number of residential zoning districts from 13 to 5. When they originally proposed to reduce them to 1, we were going to be opposing that, but I think their current proposal is fairly reasonable. They're going to open it up for public hearing on the 26th. I don't know if they'll get all the comments in on one night, but we probably need to decide if the council wants to make some comments ready to go on the 26th, and we'll have to put those together and run them past the board because we won't be able to do it tonight. But I think at any rate, my main concern is that I think the proposal is pretty reasonable. But again, the devil's going to be in the details. They're going to take 2 years to work this through. We need to make sure that the community council and the public is involved from the early stages and not allowed to comment at the last minute when no changes can be made. So I find this an encouraging development.
Okay, thanks, John. Does anybody, how do people feel about a potential, again, land use committee meeting, taking a closer look at this document to try and get some comments in by September 26th? Is there anybody that doesn't support that way of handling this? I'm not seeing anybody say anything or raising their hand, so I'm just going to write down the body supports.
And I volunteer to help, John, or if you need anybody to read or provide comments.
Yeah, and
I think
believe I included the new ordinance with the notice, the meeting notice that went out. It's an attachment.
Yeah, the new ordinance is really nearly indecipherable, and there's a more detailed, there's a more general summary that's been attached in Anna's stuff. So we should probably make that available to folks. And then I'd say anyone who wants to come to the land use committee should come and help. And Karen, that would be great. I think anybody else who wants to do it.
Oh yeah, anybody's welcome to be a part of the land use committee. It's not a closed body. So when we set some dates, it will probably have to have at least 2 this month. And it's going to be pedal to the metal so that we can get our work done. And anybody is, I'll make sure a notice is emailed out, and we'll get the FCC conference room reserved, and hopefully get some good work done this month and on these important things.
Okay, and then the last one I haven't had a chance to look at yet, but they call it municipal code cleanup parking and site access development standards. There's been 2 ordinances that have been passed by the municipality, by the assembly, one dealing with parking requirements and one dealing with site access. And I think this is just trying to sort of clean up the code to make sure it reflects those. But I know I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so I don't have a position on it one way or the other.
Yeah, that was my take too. They've made some pretty major changes to Title 21, and so this is like another attempt, like they did a couple of weeks ago, maybe, to make sure that Title 21 reflects ordinances that the Assembly has passed with regard to changes to Title 21. I haven't looked at either. I just got it sent out and printed out, and that was it. But I think, John and I can take a look at it, but I think that's essentially what the situation is. All of this has already been approved. Now the Assembly just has to amend the plan to code to reflect what they've already made decisions on. But the public you can submit comments to the Planning and Zoning Commission, not Assembly. A Planning and Zoning Commission hearing is scheduled October 2nd. So comments are due by the 18th. And then this would go before the Assembly, probably in October at some point. So anybody have any thoughts on that at all? If not, I think we've done a yeoman's job of covering a whole lot of important things, and I appreciate everybody's patience and going till 9:30. And we really appreciate, you wanting to be a part of our council and active at an active level. So thank you so much. And if anybody has like 1 second to say something, Merle, you have your hand raised.
I had a question for John. You referred to the land use committee meeting. When was the last one, John?
Yeah, was it in June or July? Now I can't remember.
I think I think it was in July. The last one we had was the one on the airport goals and objectives. And I think you came into that one at the last minute, but that's the last one we had.
That was at the
FCC conference room.
FCC conference room, okay. Just one other comment. As I said earlier, I had went to the aviation board meeting. One of the things you probably should know that Steve Straight, who is a member of the Turnican Community Council, is now appointed the head of that governor's advisory board. The other thing is that the signatory airlines have vetoed any expenditures for maintenance at Lake Hood. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Merle. And I know you told me that before, and I think that's just, probably should have brought it up with John Johansson, because that's pretty bad. It's just, that's the biggest float planes, facility in the world. And for the airport to have a cavalier attitude that, we don't need to maintain that is, consider they're bending over backwards, making sure cargo can do whatever it can to develop, and yet they don't put a priority on that. So that's, discouraging to hear.
It's the Opens Meetings Act that's the key to everything, and they're not following it. If they were letting you in on the Opens Meetings Act, so much of this stuff that you're finding, that you're dealing with over there would have come up, and you would have had a chance to explain to the signatory airlines why you didn't want it, instead of going in there after they've approved, after there's been approval and the signatory airlines have been allowed to spend state dollars to do their projects and not the projects that we as a community might want them to do. Thank you, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Merle. Okay, unless anybody else has anything to share, I think I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, who was that?
John.
John. Thank you. And can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, sounds good. Steve. I think that was Steve.
It was.
I looked up and I saw Steve's hand anyway.
Yeah.
So is there any objection to adjourning the meeting at 9:33 is what my watch says, PM. And once again, so any objection? So meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Al, again for hosting our Zoom meeting this evening and sticking with